Hi, Sharon.
Hi there.
You can start sharing your screen so long. Okay, I can see it. Do you want to advance quickly to the second slide?
Okay.
Did you? Okay, there we go.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Yes, everyone can see me. Hello there. Good afternoon. My name is Mbongile Ntwasa. I am an advisor at the Center for Teaching and Learning. Welcome to our another session of Auxin. Welcome back, colleagues, to the new, well, second semester and the third term. I hope you guys are ready and recharged for teaching and learning on campus. Now, today we are going to have Dr. Sharon Malan, who's going to be presenting on integrating AI as a tutoring tool in an ECP extended curricular program, academic literacies module. Now, before I ask Sharon to start, I'm quickly going to read her bio. Dr. Sharon Malan holds a PhD in educational psychology and teaches in the extended curricular programs at SU. She specializes in student development, academic literacy, and economics education with a strong focus on innovative teaching methods such as flipped classroom, problem-based learning, and AI-driven tutoring. With a deep passion for teaching, learning, assessment, as well as cognitive education, she integrates evidence-based strategies to develop critical thinking, metacognition, and lifelong learning skills in students. Sharon, thank you so much for preparing this presentation. I know it's a very topical, in the university, and I hope the colleagues are going to engage you later on.
Thank you so much, Awesome. I'm just quickly going to share my screen. Um, Thank you very, very much. So the purpose of my presentation is to show how I use Gen AI, generative AI, as a tutoring tool for my academic literacies module. And my talk will specifically focus on the following. So let's just get my screen going. I'm going to just explain why I use AI intentionally. I will demonstrate to you how I implemented Ellie as a tutor in my class, and then also just give you a few insights and recommendations from my side. Now, I want to start with a disclaimer, and that is that my use of AI, like most of us, are still very much in its infancy. It's an ongoing experiment that I think I'm going to have for years to come. Raises more questions than answers. I do believe AI has immense potential to accelerate learning and to deepen learning of students. But I also believe it's important to remain skeptical and critical as well. To me, it's neither good nor bad. I think more important to me is how we use AI, either in our classes and as lecturers, and also how our students are using AI. So why use it intentionally? Without clear pedagogical intention from the lecturer side and the student side, I think it risks the whole idea of promoting surface level understanding. It can become a crutch for our students. It can take away deep learning in a way, take away curiosity if there's just instant answers. And this whole shortcuts that students can take could affect the whole learning process. In a way, it takes away the struggle. There's this quote that says learning is hard before it gets easier. And if you want to become good at something, you have to do more of something. So if I want to become good at maths, I need to do more of maths so that neural networks can form. But my concern as an educator and also focusing on cognitive education is how do those neural networks form if learning can become easier. And a quote of Lennox Oliver. I don't know if he's in the audience today, but Lennox was so spot on with when he said, "With AI in the mix, it's like wrestling. You have to grapple with it, and you also have to embrace it at the same time because it is not going to go away." Now, a recent Australian study surveyed 8,000 students. Those were students at the University of Queensland, US, Deakin and Monash, and they found the following, that 80% of that 8,000 students were using AI, that 50% used it weekly or daily, 70% believed it could increase cheating, not saying they cheating, but it had the potential for cheating. 40% used it in assessments when they were not supposed to. That to me was a bit concerning. And then this was worrisome. 90% worried about breaking university rules. And that to me is concerning, where students don't have those guidelines on what they can and cannot do. And then 80% believed also that it will impact their careers. Then I went further and looked at some ways that students are using AI at the moment. And these were the main findings from the Insight Center Center's report. The report's title is From Gen Z to Gen AI. And there they saw also widespread usage of AI. 90% of young Australians use Gen A for study, learning, and entertainment. Now, I bring up Australia's studies because Australia is quite ahead with AI in especially higher education, and that's why lots of the studies are from Australia. So 90% of young Australians use Gen A. They usually use tools like ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and Claude, and then the others. But those are the four front runners. They then also use it for schoolwork, 74%. Half of them for brainstorming and information gathering. And then this was also so good to see, is that most Gen Zs, 80% plus, won't use AI to cheat or plagiarize. That was not their intention. And they would rather use it for study support, skill development, emotional advice, things like companionship, things like stress relief, seeking a judgment-free space to vent, etc. The pros that the students said is that it was convenience. They had 24/7 access to it. It increased their productivity. It helped with the learning. The cons were they were worried about cheating because they weren't sure what cheating is. Again, it comes back to those guidelines and the policies that we need in place. They were also fearful of misinformation or loss of originality as well. And then what was interesting is that 30% reconsidered their studies, their career choices due to AI. So many of those students pivoted towards tech-related and automation-resistant roles. So our responsibility is not to stop students from using AI. I'm not for that. I think it's rather to maximize the benefits while also mitigating the risks, because it's there. Students are using it. We can't ignore it. So that is the reason why I decided to experiment with using AI specifically in my in my course as a tool to support my learning. So I teach academic literacies, and my model outcome is to develop critical thinking for my students by writing persuasive argumentative essays, exploring inequality in South Africa from an avatar's perspective. So that's one of my main outcomes. And the challenge, of course, in reaching this outcome is that I can write this with a click of a button, and it can do it well. I've looked at AIs, they will pass my essay. And that risks the skill of them developing the process of critical thinking and the process of writing. And that was concerning to me. So it's as Rowe, I always use Rowe, that says writing is also thinking. Writing is part of the thinking process. I mean, something else is doing the writing. I'm not thinking. And then there's a risk that our thinking becomes impoverished and superficial when we outsource writing to machines. And I think that's for many of our modules as well. So this led me to ask, what teaching and learning strategy would currently then be best for my undergraduate students with Gen A in the mix? So as a result, I made key changes. I focused much more on my process, the process of learning in my classroom, the entire learning process rather than the product of learning. And I also aimed at cultivating evaluative judgment in my students. That just means my students could critically assess their work. They could also assess their peers' work, and also the feedback and the examples that AI generated for them. So with the help of MindJoy, which is an AI-powered learning platform, Ellie was born. And Ellie, I'm so in love with little Ellie. Ellie is the Eloquent AI Literacy Assistant in my classroom, and she acted as a tutor to provide guidance, just like peers, and I provided guidance in my classroom. In a sense, I could say she was an additional to what I was doing. So what Ellie did, she supported my students by writing alongside my students, not for my students. She also was one of the support staff, really, with my support and my peers that provided support to each other. And she also provided feedback, instant and real-time feedback, but that was also part. So she was the third member of the group. The peers, myself, and Ellie was just another tool that we used. So in my module, I implemented my module by centering on the fostering of the development of critical thinking skills, the art of persuasion first, because they have to write an argumentative essay. And that then is followed by a very messy collaborative 6-week writing process during my classes. And why I say it's messy, because writing is messy and writing is very hard. And especially in the beginning, when we're busy with our research, we're all over the place. So I wanted them to experience the process of writing. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly demonstrate Ellie to you. So I'm just going to share Ellie with you. Okay, so if you look at Ellie, we broke down the essay in different stages. In week 1, which is not here, week 1 was where they went to the library and did research, and then the planning. And then after that, we implemented Ellie from week 2 onwards. So you could see the stages. Week 2 was the thesis statements, week 3, the body paragraphs, week 4, the conclusions, 5, the editing, etc. Then throughout these stages, I'm quickly going to go to one of these tutors. Throughout these stages, we had settings. So that means these are all the prompts that we put in for Ellie to get Ellie to work effectively. But what I want to show, don't worry too much about the top part. I could upload. So let's say this theme is on the thesis statement and introduction. So I could then upload my notes, my criteria onto Ellie. And then if my criteria didn't answer a student's question, it could be supplemented from other LLMs. But I had the strongest voice in Ellie. And then, so that I wanted to show you. Then I powered her to Socratic mode, so she could ask questions to the students. I could put that off, and then that means she would then provide more examples, or like ChatGPT would say, okay, but this is how you could improve it. So for the beginning, a lot of it was still in Socratic mode, where Ellie just asked questions, and in some of my instructions was never give the answer, always ask probing questions. Then I also just want to show you in her role. So her instructions are, you are Ellie, an AI tutor designed to support students. This week, students are focusing on developing their thesis statements of their argumentative essay. At the beginning of each new chat, after you've introduced yourself, please include this disclaimer. And I've did this every time they opened a chat. I can help. I'm not flawless. Always double check facts and verify sources, and think for yourself, because that was part of it, that they always had to go verify information from, and that was part of my module as well. And then as your primary role is as an AI tutor, your role is to scaffold the learning through Socratic questioning and guided reflection, helping the students develop their writing skill. You must never write content for the students, but rather guide them to improve. But I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And then I prompted her with the criteria, like my criteria to evaluate the thesis statements and introduction. So my rubrics, basically. I provided her guidelines for how to support my students in class, to provide feedback to my students, and to help with the reflection process as well. And then lastly, I just want to mention here is that you could also set her your course to privacy, so that only you have access to that information and your information is secured. And you can, if you wanted to change something, I could just maybe take that out, and then I could literally just type in on here, and I could just save that changes like we do with Sunlearn. So very, very user friendly as well. Okay, so then I just want to show you a typical exchange with Ellie. So let's go to one of my tutors. I'm going to go with Ellie week 3 because I did something wrong in Ellie week 2, but I'm going to start a new chat. So I'm just going to show you now. Now she's going to, oh yeah, maybe before I do that, I want to show you an avatar. Let me do that. Sorry about that. So I'm going to show you, she says, hello, my name is Ange. I'm your avatar narrative guide. I'm here to help you explore different perspectives of inequality in South Africa through conversation. So you can interview any of these avatars to better understand the experiences. So you could, so my students could then, as part of their research, interview any of these avatars, like a small business owner, migrant worker, a teacher in an under-resourced school, etc. Right. So let's say my students want to interview a domestic worker. So I'm just going to be a student now, and I'm going to say I'm going to choose number 9 because that is and I'm going to ask her, what is your average salary? So let's see what she does there. What is your average salary? And then she also has a disclaimer, remember, because that's also important. I'm just one person sharing my own experiences. My story does not speak for everyone in my community or across South Africa. Inequality affects people in different ways. Always seek diverse perspectives. So I thought that was also very important to get those disclaimers so that when students use AI out of the classroom, other AI, that it's installed, that they realize this. So she says, as a domestic worker, I usually earn around 3,500 per month, 3,500, but can be less if I don't get any work. It's hard to make ends meet, especially. So let's ask her, do you have any benefits? I'm going to make it in, do you get any benefits? Let's just see. Oh, and I want to say that this information is mainly sourced from an article from our prior dean, Professor Ingrid Woolard, on poverty and inequality in South Africa. So again, Ingrid's information was in here, and then after that they could go to LMS. So this is quite reliable information. Okay, so do you get any benefits? Let's just see if she gets any benefits there. Just trying to get just get the arrow going. Let's just see, as a domestic worker, no, I don't get benefits like medical aid or pension from my employers. If I get sick or need time off, it usually means I don't get paid for those days. I rely on my salary alone. And now I can ask her lots of questions on inequality, and that stimulates my students to also learn more about the topic. Okay, so that was Ellie. So what happened after Ellie? They then went and did further research after these conversations. They then had class presentations in groups of 4 on a chosen avatar. So the students could choose any of these avatars. And this exposed the whole class to different perspectives of inequality, to encourage further research. And why I brought in avatars is I wanted to humanize the topic and to foster empathy and deeper social awareness from my students, that it doesn't just become an academic essay that we have to write, but that really fosters and humanizes the topic. Okay, so then I'm quickly going to show you as one of the tutors. So let's say now Ellie is going to help me. Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm here to help you reflect and improve your body paragraphs, etc., especially making sure you connect your arguments to your avatar's experience. I can help, but I'm not flawless. Okay, so I'm going to test the thesis here and see if I can get away with it, because my thesis statement didn't work at the top earlier. Okay, so I'm just going to say, I'm going to give a very bad thesis statement. I'm going to ask, is my thesis okay? Inequality in SA is a problem. Okay, that's a terrible thesis, but let's see what Ellie says. Okay, so let's say that was the first attempt. Now you would see she says that's a good start. Now, I will comment on that later. But let's think more deeply. Does your thesis statement clearly express your specific position or main argument? For example, what kind of inequality are you focusing on? Is it economic? Is it educational, healthcare, something else? How does your avatar's perspective influence your view on this issue? And can you rephrase your thesis so it takes a clear, arguable stance, etc.? So I'm not going to show more than that. Okay, well, another thing I want to show you. So let's say the student has now had this conversation with Ellie, and now say, can you translate this into order? Let's go there. So I'll start under, let me just say again, can you translate into Rosa? See what she does. And I also asked my students in class, and they were spot on. They said that the translations were spot on. So we did test it with the students. Then I just want to show you, I can also look at the chats of my students, but let me just go to that. And then I am going to go there. Let's take Ellie week 3. And you will see now here I get insight from my classroom. So I get student activity. I could see how my students felt about the class, but I can also get insight. So I can go, let me just show on the chats of a student. Let's say I can go here and then see what the specific chat was, and I could download it if I wanted to see that after a class. And then I could look at the student activity. You can see if what their sentiment was. Sentiment is how they emotionally felt during the session. And that means positive means they felt challenged, but also confident. Neutral is focused or indifferent, and we can see that. Or negative feels frustrated, gets stuck. There's one student that got felt negative, and there's another one here. And then I can also go and assist those students. And then you have learning states, which also says, is the student curious, confused, or disengaged, which also gives you an inclination if you need to go to the student maybe. Is the student curious or disengaged? I could also look at common misperceptions. So if I go into my insights, I could see the common misconceptions. The thesis statement effectiveness was still a problem. That came up 3 times. So it depends on what the questions are. They struggled with the historical context in economic inequality. I could look at the root causes of those misconceptions, and also it gives you topics worth reteaching. Maybe I should look at the thesis statement effectiveness again, because the students are still struggling with that. Then another thing I could have done was, I did not use it, but there is a marking tool where you could let the tutor mark the work based on your rubrics and provide your feedback. So you just prompted to do that as well. All right, so I just want to go back to sharing my presentation. Let me just go back to that. Okay, so let me just give it time to move. Right. So what strengths did I experience? 84% of my class was very positive. They were actively engaged. You could see the students were very engaged. This I got from Mindjoy, the statistics. The AI answered 1,797 questions outside of office hours that I didn't have to answer on email. And it meant 11 full days of additional support to the students. What the students especially liked is the fact that they had a tutor available 24/7. They could ask as many questions without feeling embarrassed or judged. They learned also at their own pace. And they loved the fact that they could get that immediate feedback. So some of my students said, and this was so encouraging, it felt as if Dr. Malan was sitting next to me in reason. That really felt encouraging. Ellie helped me write my essay on my own rather than copying an essay from ChatGPT. She helped me step by step, helped me think critically without doing the work for me. Right, so some of my challenges were interesting, and I'd love to see other research on that, and I think this can stimulate new topics for research. I didn't really see clear improvement in prompt writing, and I also want to admit I did share some prompts with my students that weren't good enough really, that still needs development. And my students also, I didn't train my students in prompt writing. I'm learning that on my own at the moment as well. So that was a issue. Then also the Socratic mode that I had, Ellie, needed to be switched off for specific examples. I didn't do it. So students said in the last week 6, ma'am, she's irritating us now because she's just keeping on asking questions, and we need suggestions also from her now. So just be in connection with the students, because that was also one of the things. And also, if you make it too tough and they just ask questions and never give suggestions, they will just go back to other AI tools, which they do after class, I suppose. But yes, you don't have to make it too tough for them. Some students also, I noticed, avoided using Ellie. I don't know if it's a techno fear. Reasons aren't clear. Again, another topic one can research. Those students that wanted to chats, and then they just went and did it and went further on their own. Then what many of the students said, they didn't like the overly positive tone. Now I said I'm going to refer back to that. If that terrible quote, that thesis statement, and Ellie was positive and said that's good. For now, she shouldn't have said that. She should have maybe said that's a start, but not a good start. They also didn't like repetitive responses. So sometimes she didn't scaffold, but she would go back to things that she already asked them. And then, as I said, her questions sometimes irritated them. And then the code switching, that's not a challenge, but the code switching to other languages, that's also another topic for investigation. I noticed that they reduced, and that many didn't even bother to use it. So I'm not sure if it depends on the difficulty of the module, like for maths, and then they would want to get the answers or suggestions in Xhosa. But it was interesting that many students at this point in time didn't really make use of it. In my small classroom, my classroom had about 52 to 60 students. Then recommendations that I can share is start small. One assignment, one tutorial, low stakes. Maybe if you yourself is uncertain still, be intentional. Be intentional. Integrate AI in your teaching, learning, and assessment. Address, specifically focusing on what you think the student needs are, not your needs, but the student needs. And do you want it to address content acquisition mostly, or understanding, or skill building, or feedback? What is it that you want to do with the tool? And then I said, use the right AI tools that engage students, or maybe use any AI tool, but use it right. Because at the end of the day, it's how you prompt AI and what you use it for. And then also, obviously, students need AI literacy. I would love to hear if anybody is aware of an AI literacy course at the moment already available at Stellenbosch, because that would be lovely if we could have access to that. Set clear AI use boundaries, because students need to know they don't want to do things incorrectly. They need to know what is allowed and what isn't. So for my class, for instance, I have a traffic light. So green is you can use AI, generate your PowerPoints fully. The avatars, AI can create it wonderfully for you. You can use AI to give you feedback. You can use ChatGPT to do that. Writing alongside you, the editing AI can do that totally, because now the student can express that. Because our student that is not comfortable in English can express his answer in a much clearer way. So I can see what his thesis statement is, and language doesn't become a barrier. Orange is you can use AI to brainstorm ideas, rephrase, but not write full sections. Then they start realizing you're breaking a rule in my class. And then red, you don't say, write the essay for me. That is a no-go, and there's responsibilities if you do that. So in a way, trying to figure out the guidelines for my students. And then also build evaluative judgment, teach students to ascertain what is a good response and not a good response, what's good writing, not good writing, is etc. So they need those skills. And then help your students grow feedback confidence. Especially AI feedback is easy because it's very neutral, and that's why it's it doesn't have judgment. But peer feedback becomes personal, and my feedback to my students become personal. But I think students need to be able to handle all different types of feedback, that humanizing feedback as well. And then lastly, here, make assessments AI smart rather than AI proof. That I think is, from all my recommendations, I think that's the most important recommendation. Then I see Professor Ada Jansen is here, because I want to share. Professor Ada Jansen gave me this wonderful opportunity to experiment with AI, but she shared an article yesterday with me, and you could see it's an article from in the Sunday Times, I think 2-3 days ago. UCT scraps flawed AI detectors as it races to keep up with global shift in higher education. And UCT also scrapped Turnitin, and they adopted more of a university-wide framework that sets out how to integrate AI in teaching, learning, and assessment. And their decision was driven by mounting evidence that tools such as Turnitin are unreliable and not fit for purpose, undermine student trust and fairness. Some of this research that I've read so far said that when lecturers start trusting students with AI, then students tend to hold themselves at a high standard. But when lecturers would say it's not allowed, etc., that's easy, because everything now is cheating. And then it's cheating, whatever they do. So I think that was also, don't break student trust in the process. So my closing takeaways: use AI with clear pedagogical intention, because without it, it risks becoming a shortcut that can undermine deep learning and thinking. Think and experiment how you could integrate AI into your teaching and learning and assessment processes, and then rethink assessments to be AI smart, not AI proof. And I think AI comes with great promise, but also with great uncertainty. But one thing is clear, it can't be ignored. There's a growing consensus among researchers and scholars in the field and those studying AI, that AI will significantly transform universities over the next 10 years. And that's where Amara's law rings true for us. And Amara says, we tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run, but we underestimate the effect in the long run. So, colleagues, I don't think we have the luxury of time to respond to this challenge. I think we need to wake up to the call, and we just need to experiment with this tool. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sharon. Yeah, quite a lot, but I think the heart of your presentation has been about the intentionality, and I liked that you emphasize not just the intentions of the students or the academic, but both of them, because it's about supporting teaching and learning in and out of the classroom. And I think one of the evidence was when students are actually saying that it still feels like you are in the room when they are busy doing their homework. And that is because they have seen how it integrates, how Ellie integrates with your teaching and your content. And then there's more trust between, what students are learning and what you are teaching as well. I'm going to open to the floor, and I think Prof. Unger was the first person to ask a question. Prof, do you want to unmute your mic and ask?
Yes, thank you very much. Geez, Dr. Malan, that was so awe-inspiring on what is all possible. Yeah, and it's stimulated a lot of ideas that I think will be worth exploring. I think the time-saving element by the time you're done is probably what's the most attractive, because it's so difficult to give individualized feedback, and this is a methodology that one could definitely exploit. My question was actually because I'm always of the opinion that students who struggle, it's more because they struggle with language. And so my question was, could they develop their entire essay in their language of choice, and then once the final product is done, use either the same or a different tool to then convert it back to English?
Yes.
I mean, at some point they have to obviously learn to write in English too, but at least in those early stages, so they can do it the other way around as well, not just use it to clarify something that was drafted or explained in English.
As a matter of fact, I did tell my students that they're allowed to do it, that they could literally through the whole 6 weeks write in their language, but whenever I needed to support them, or they had questions for me, or their peers had to give them feedback, they had to just translate that back into isiXhosa. But funny enough, and that's where I said that I think more research needs to be done there, is that many didn't make use of that opportunity. So they would start with, especially their thesis statements. I think that was important, and I also emphasized that, and maybe I should have emphasized that more. Maybe that is something to think of. But especially with the thesis statements, they would write that in their home language and then translate it back to English on Ellie, on the Mindjoy platform. But it tapered off, and they just later went on to write in English. But I do think you address a very important thing there, that there's language barriers but also the thing that they also have to be able to write in English at the end of the day. So that has to be navigated, that they don't become so dependent on AI that they never experience writing in English. So yeah, it's all a balancing act, but yes, they did not make so much use of that possibility of using that language code switching.
Thank you so much, Prof. Engler, for that question. The next question that I think is also fundamental, and it's one of the things I wrote in my notes about institutional responsibility. And I think Dr. Fender is asking that question. Do you want to unmute?
Yes, thanks. I'm so inspired. I want to do it immediately. I just want to get all of my second years immediately onto this. So I was just asking what is the university's relationship with the third-party software, and then Dalian just answered now that the MS faculty has an agreement. So how do we take this further? If I want to implement Mindjoy tomorrow, what's the first thing that I do?
Yeah, I don't have answers there. I just see that UCT, I think with the article that Professor Janssen shared with us, UCT has a free Google, and I can't remember the other one, a free version that they're allowed to use. Because I was thinking that instead of faculties trying to compete for these platforms, I think this needs to be there institutionally, that we have licenses for all our students, equity. All our students need licenses, our lecturers also, with whatever tool we're going to use. And that would be a good start, because otherwise we're sitting here, we've run with this program, another faculty is using another platform, and I think the institution needs to come to the table. I have mentioned it a few times, but I really think it's time that we explore that, so that we have that in common. Like we have Sunlearn, we need a AI bot that is a platform that we all can use. Can maybe I just add to that? I had a question earlier on, does anybody know about an AI literacy course? I have one that is from Australia that I'm using at the moment with my students, because I just don't have the time to develop something like that. And I don't have the knowledge to develop that either. But I was wondering if the library or maybe somebody knows about AI literacy course, and then also that we really have very clear guidelines as lecturers, AI guidelines and guidelines that we can share with our students. So just those two things.
Sorry about that. I see Elizabeth perhaps could have a response to that question.
Thanks. Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
It's Elizabeth from the library. We have met before. So I do
Yes.
know that there is, at the institution, there is being worked on general AI literacies course from multiple stakeholders. So we in the library obviously do information literacy, and there's a big overlap for a lot of AI literacy with information literacy, because AI at the end of the day is also an information source. So, you know, it's in the name. So we can do parts of it. And then other stakeholders are better suited to do other parts of it. But I do know from Center for Teaching and Learning, and that there is a work towards a general AI literacies course for the institution. I think the focus at the moment is just on updating the current guidelines of those ones. So I think it's just maybe a bit slow going for lecturers, but in the meantime, from an information literacy perspective, so how choosing right tools, how do you work with the information within the tools, being able to prompt effectively, critically evaluating both the tool and the information with it, is you can speak to your faculty librarian for that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that.
Yes, thank you so much, Elizabeth. All right, colleagues. I do not see anyone else in the chat. I see Benita also gave a suggestion of AI Skills Hub. Perhaps in the moment you can check that out. Is there anyone else, colleagues, who wants to comment?
Maybe I just want to also just say about the Mindjoy platform that Dalian Hubert and Professor Ada Janssen inspired in the faculty to use. It is an amazing platform, and what is wonderful about that is that they literally take you by the hand. So even if you didn't even have an idea how to set a prompt, they literally take you by the hand and do most of that for you. They do all the the uploading of students as the student list. You literally send them a student list. They sort that out with the students on their own. So it really doesn't give you a lot of admin there at all. So it's a very, very user-friendly way to bring AI into a classroom. And the support is like if you email them within that same day, you are going to get a response from them. So that was also encouraging. So I would have loved if we could have all had Mindjoy, but again, as I said, if the institution can decide on a tool that we can all have access to that is cost effective for all our students. I see here, is the data kept to the SU environment, or do they get it for training data? You can secure your data. You can even ask them that you don't want any of your data to be used, because there is security, and you can even ask them to delete everything after you've used it. They use any data that they use currently is just to get their platform working better. So they're not really interested in the students themselves, but more to get the platform to work more smoothly. And Peter Heinz, the CEO of Mindjoy, also emphasizes that in his presentations, that that's what makes it lovely, is that your information is secure. And then you can also download any of those chats, etc., from your students as well, if you want it. And your reports as well. So yeah, very user-friendly, very nice tool to have.
There's one more question from Elizabeth. She's asking if it includes the articles and teaching and learning materials uploaded.
Yeah, that articles that I upload is my articles for my students that I would place on Sunlearn for my students in any case. And then as Mindjoy itself, that don't use that. So they basically, I can delete that if I wanted to as well, because that's my safe space. It's secure for my specific classroom. I can even decide to share it institutionally or keep it in my classroom, and I set it to my privacy to my classroom. So for Mindjoy itself, they're not interested in that data. They're more interested in how the prompts are working and what functions they need to add to make it more effective for us to work with. So yes, that's what I liked about Mindjoy and not using other AI tools in the classroom, is the fact that it is so, that your information is so secure.
And then Michelle Pique is asking if the students have the possibility to opt out of their chats being shared with their lecturers.
Yes, I never forced my students to participate. They were all on Mindjoy, so the class list was shared, but it was their choice. Because we had peer feedback from Ellie, myself, and my students. So if they decided they didn't want to use Ellie, they didn't have to use Ellie. It wasn't to their disadvantage in any way. It was their choice to use it or not to use it. But what I found is that they all used it. Some just didn't use it as much as I wanted to, but they all did use it.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. The question is more, do students have the possibility to opt out of their chats being shared with the lecturer? That if that is a need, then that is something you could communicate. I didn't do that. I just had access, and then maybe that can inhibit a student. I get that. But if that is a need, you can communicate that to Mindjoy, and then they will test if they can stop that. And then that could be maybe build in a permission button, share my chat with my lecturer, don't share my chat with my lecturer. But I think also it gives, it makes it ethically viable in the sense that they also have like a warning if in my students' case, I can only be woord kom nie, a warning that if they use words like abuse, etc., then it warns, the system warns you. So it's just to make it a safe space for the students as well. So my students were writing on inequality, so they did use words that was lightened by the system saying, but they're using words now like violence, etc. So it just gave me a little warning, a little flag next to that student. But I'm sure that one could ask Mindjoy, and those are the types of things they do. So they streamline it towards your specific needs.
All right. Colleagues, any last question? Joseph, I thought I saw your hand. You can unmute.
In the past, what I noticed, because I brought in before Ellie, I did use AI tools in the classroom. Because I'm not so focused on my final assessment, the essay itself, my focus is more on the learning process. So the marks that they get is in the continuous assessment as they progress in class, give each other feedback, reflect on the feedback. Those were more of the things that I focused with in assessment. And then I think my essay at the end counted 30% of the whole mark, because that was just the final product, which can keep on improving. So the essay itself, what I did notice is, especially students that struggled to express themselves clearly, even in their thesis statements, which is the basis, the point that they're trying to make, that was much clearer than in the past. So in the past, when I marked essays, it became frustrating if the student struggled to express himself, and for you then to try and make sense out of that. So in that sense, it made it much easier for me. But we worked through it through the whole 6 weeks. So to me, it was more important to look at how a student improved consistently, rather than just assessing the final product. But yes, the performance did improve because they could express themselves clearer.
There's another question.
For those that did not use it, do you know if access to computers was an issue for students? I worry that integrating AI can leave some behind. Yes, I think that's the whole idea with this idea of it has to be available to all. Luckily, with Mindjoy, it's also available on your cell phone. So it works like the app that they can download on their cell phones, and it's very user-friendly on the cell phone as well. In my class, I specifically asked each student if they had access, to make sure they have computers, or at least a phone that can that they can use. And for none of my students, it was a problem. But yes, that is a concern, because we have to make sure that we address equity and fairness. But in my class, everybody had access. 3 students didn't have a laptop, but Ellie was available on their phones.
Excellent. All right, we have to end it there, colleagues. If you want to continue the conversation, Sharon is available on email. Can you please spend time to please give Sharon feedback? I'm sure she'd like to hear your feedback on her presentation and what you thought about that. Yes, so we will see you in the next Auxin. You guys must have a wonderful afternoon forward. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.